This is Start Here, episode 3. I'm with Grant Plotkin, and Grant is someone that is so amazing. I had met him last year during South by Southwest, and we just kept it on from there. So, yeah, welcome to this whole podcast.
Jess, I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so who are you? How old are you? What do you do?
Yeah, I'll give you the stats. I'm Grant Plotkin. I am 27 years old from Wayne, Pennsylvania, back in the day. And I've been in New York for 9 years now. Went to Parsons School of Design. Was really interested in brand marketing, storytelling, and never left.
So, what do you do now? And it's just this amazing company called Meet the Edge. So,
You
what do
know
you
it.
do?
Yeah, Meet the Edge. We are a full service creative brand marketing studio. So I started the business around 4.5 years ago. We really will get brought in different stages of projects. Some people come to us with an idea and we'll do everything from brand strategy, naming, mission, vision, values, customer profiles, positioning to brand identity. So all the visual touch points, logo, typography, color scheme, iconography, approach to imagery, and then in the formats of a digital home. So really that takes the shape of a website. Usually we do some UX UI on the app side as well. Typically it's web design, desktop, mobile, and Figma, development across a series of backend tech stacks, and then various applications from marketing campaigns to editorial to packaging design and everything in between. I always say, if you can create it, we can do it.
Just full house. If you need
Full
anything,
house. Yeah.
start talking to Grant and he'll pull things together. How old were you when you started?
Gosh, I must have been 23 is when I officially filed the LLC paperwork and launched it. I never worked in an agency before. I kind of am actually turned off by the word agency. And I think it has a weird reputation now because people are so detached from the work itself. And it just feels like a way to have a lot of headcount. And I always say headcount equal headache. So my philosophy with building my team at the studio has always been keep it lean and mean, people as needed for certain projects. But yeah,
Or, like, run me through, like, did you go to school or like, how did you start or like, why did you want to start this?
yeah. I mean, so I always think of Meet the Edge as a creative partner. And I think one of the beauties of having a creative entity is we're able to take someone's idea and execute, bring it to life through a creative lens. I wanted to be a journalist when I was younger. I loved watching 60 Minutes. That was my dream. And then I caught the business bug and fell in love with experiential marketing and storytelling and really rich narratives. And so at Parsons, I had some really great work experiences taking night classes. New York is very expensive. And during the day, I worked essentially full time at a place called Museum of Ice Cream, which is a big experiential retail concept. Started here in New York City and fell in love with the whole concept of immersive pop-up brand experiences. And at the time, it was somewhat novel. Social media was fun. And I learned a lot about partnerships and community marketing and how do you take people on a journey, whether it's in a 30-minute capacity or turn a movement into a moment, or turn a moment into a movement rather. And that was really the start of my marketing career. And then I had a little stint at Rock Nation, which is Jay-Z's music management company. I always think music is a fun medium to play with because it transcends all sorts of demographics. You can speak different languages, you can come from different backgrounds, but you have that shared communal interest of a song, melody, a beat. And actually, in my free time, I like writing jingles. That's a fun fact. So for my friends' birthdays and parties, I always put a little jingle together. It's kind of it's a hybrid between a poem and a song, and it always is a real crowd pleaser.
Yeah. Well, when my birthday comes, I'll be like, Grant,
And it's all original. No Chat GPT. It's Chat GP right here.
that's a good one. Well, I know we spoke about this one time. Talk about your mom because she was in the whole marketing world too.
Yeah. So my mom has always been very entrepreneurial. I have so many vivid memories as a kid helping her assemble different invitations and packages through different organizations that she was involved with growing up. And then in 2008, she launched Philadelphia Sports Group, which was really the preeminent sports marketing agency in the Philadelphia region where I'm from originally. And then the financial crash happened. And so that upended the business. And she had this amazing second act where now it's the Molly Plotkin Group, and they are a full service keynote speakers bureau. So they represent everyone from entrepreneurs, athletes, coaches, Olympians, wellness practitioners, and bring them to different organizations looking to have a motivational speaker or someone that can essentially share their message with a wider audience. And I learned a lot from her just around relationship building, client management, and playing the long game. And we both started our businesses respectively around the same time. And it's been really fun to kind of riff off ideas together and take some of those learnings and challenges and kind of, navigate uncharted territory in a post pandemic world together.
Do you major in marketing or media or anything similar to what you're doing now?
It's a great question. So my major was called creative entrepreneurship, which if you haven't heard of, it's by design. I actually designed it myself. So at New School, which is the parent umbrella for Parsons and Eugene Lang Liberal Arts, I basically created a consortium of different classes. So some of them were political, some of them were media studies, some of them were brand marketing, and I basically fused them all together to create a major that really served my interest because I think of myself as a multi hyphenate. I'm not purely a creative. I think of myself as a storyteller. I think of myself as, I'm politically motivated. I have a lot of interests. I love hospitality. And so I think creative entrepreneurship to me spoke to the way the world was moving as well. I have friends that recently graduated, and some of these degrees are hard to find careers in now, truthfully, because the world is moving at such a pace. And I think the beauty of entrepreneurship is you have to be agile, you have to be flexible, you have to roll with the punches and be okay with rejection. And on the creative side, it's amazing because it allows me to tap into strategy, visual design, which I'm always been an admirer of. And I think blending those two worlds together, I had the fortunate ability to be in a room with so many talented designers, architects, engineers, fashion designers as well. And I realized there was a gap because they wanted to focus on the craft, but they didn't know how to market it or have perhaps the business acumen to be able to monetize it. And I felt like I could position myself speaking in both worlds. And we're lucky now at Meet the Edge because we work across such a roster of clientele from retail, hospitality, tech, nonprofit, venture, and everything in between. And it's amazing because I'm able to basically use our resources at the studio to be able to tap into other industries that a lot of our creative team wouldn't necessarily overlap with in the same way.
So branding and marketing and I know that a majority of people probably think that's just slapping a logo on something and be like, here you go, and that's it. But you noted on storytelling, and I think that that is the pinnacle of it all. It's not just telling the story, but resonating with the audience or like who your market clientele is. And that is so important in making a household name and like memorable brand. Can you speak on why do you think some companies miss that?
I mean, I would say your brand is your DNA. And if it sounds dramatic, it is because it's the shoes that you're wearing. It's the apparel that you gravitate towards. Was it a messaging and copy that pulled you in? Or was it because you heard about it, in the marketing mix, or you got targeted with an ad and that pulled you in somehow? I think it is your DNA. And I think certain organizations prioritize it and they make their brand their ethos. And it's harder to measure because our industry as creatives is not as nuanced perhaps as like digital marketing where you invest $5 and you want to make $10 back. With brand, it's you're playing the long game and you want to stay top of mind, you want to stay culturally relevant, and you want to add value across the chain. And I think our ecosystem, the role that we play, is really thinking around how are we building brands for the future. So I always say we know this audience because we are this audience. And it's true. We're a team based here in Brooklyn, New York. We have members that are in London and Milan. And I think we have our pulse on culture. And the world is moving at such a pace where if you're not meeting the moment, you're going to get left behind, hence meet the edge. And I always say kind of our philosophy as a team is really like, how do we meet the edge and be on the cutting edge of technology and meet the edge of retail, athletics, hospitality, and more.
Yeah, I think if you're consumer facing or you're hospitality facing, very retail focused, you really need something that's going to speak to you. Like maybe if you're a B2B or if you're a SaaS product, like could care less. because that's a very different audience. But yeah, I like I don't know which direction to go to because I'm sure you come with like so many years of experience.
It's interesting though, because even with some of the more conservative brands or just the clientele, I think as you brought up the SaaS-based companies, it is a competition of sorts because there is a lot of overlap in the crowded marketplace. And we see that a lot with our enterprise customers. And it's always a matter of like, how do they show up in an original format where it's memorable, where it's striking, and you don't get left behind because there's so many new startups that are popping up on a daily basis even. And I think there's so many more resources out there now for people to start businesses, especially in the United States, which is amazing. And I love being part of that American dream, so to speak. But I do think to make your mark, a strong brand is optics because ultimately that's the first touch point that someone that you are researching or there's a prospective client, they're going to go to your website and want to see what you're all about. And is that design going to pull you in from the onset? Or are you going to be turned off because it looks like it's not put together and polished? And we're always trying to empower our clients with everything they need to have a really robust rollout that's timeless.
Think in the world of people able to use ChatGPT and they can really just make a product out of nowhere. The only thing that will probably end up differentiating them is the brand and is like the content that comes along with it. So there's that certain IP in that stuff. Let's talk about how you got your first client.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were 23, you were young. What was that? Who was that?
Yeah. So I did something pretty gutsy, I think, to launch Meet the Edge because our name doesn't lend itself towards a brand marketing design studio. When you hear Meet the Edge right off the bat, you're plugged in, you obviously know what we're about now. But at the beginning, no one knew what that represented. And so I made a really clear decision. I looked at my apartment refrigerator at the time and I thought, like, what is something timeless that meets the moment, that is emotional in nature? And I thought about a handwritten note. Oh, when I decided to launch the studio, I basically procured these corrugated cardboard boxes that would get mailed to you. Keep in mind, you have to put yourself back in 2020. So people weren't socializing offline. There was a lot of people spending time at home. And I wanted to think around something that we could gamify. And so we produced these cardboard boxes, put our name on the front, Meet the Edge. You would open up the flap, you would have a little note, and it would have all of our service offerings on the top. And then the bottom, when you would open it up, you would have a custom cardstock. And one of our values as a team is challenge conventionality. So if convention is writing with black ink on white paper, we wanted to inverse it and essentially give, black dark paper with a white ink pen. It's more novel and it's original and it's, fun at its core. And it speaks to who we are as a team and what we try to bring to these projects. And so I always wrote a handwritten note to everyone, signed myself, and we gave a custom scratch off card as well, kind of like you're playing the lottery. And we would give you examples of people to write notes to. And it was a full kit. So we had a tamper seal because one of the activities in it, for example, was a note to self. So we would ask people in our network, and we mailed this out to professors, mentors, friends, family, former colleagues of mine. And we asked them to write a note to themselves around where they wanted to be a year from now. And we gave them all the materials they would need. They tamper sealed it, mailed it back to HQ, and we mailed it back to them a year later. And one of the best examples I give is I have a friend named Sistine. We went to school together, and I did not know this at the time, but she had written in her note she wanted to book a Sports Illustrated cover. And sure enough, she did. And she ended up telling me later that she framed this in her closet in New York. And I always thought it was cool to, manifest, some of these big milestones in someone's career and personal journey. But to answer your question, we mailed these kits and it ended up in the hands of one of my old professors who was running a accelerator program at the time. And so we entered into what is called a referral agreement. And essentially, this individual would send us clientele that was in their roster already, and they would get a percentage of the total project value. And these were small projects at the time. It was mostly deck design. But as I realized later in life, decks lead to checks. And those decks ended up turning to landing pages and more comprehensive websites and marketing campaigns and all sorts of different applications. But that's really how the first few clients started rolling in. And then I started building these alliances with other stakeholders in the industry. So thinking about venture firms who are writing checks for startups primarily, but we would get that first right of refusal. So if it's coming from the investor, that's a quite warm of a lead. And then we would be their dedicated creative partner. We also started working with PR agencies because ultimately, if you're trying to amplify your brand, you need the fundamental of the brand to be top tier to promote it effectively. And there's other stakeholders in the ecosystem that we have forged these alliances with. But that's something that I've started doing in later years as a nice lead gen where it's organic, and it just kind of, you're all flowing in the same river. So why not rise the tides together?
I love that story because it's so creative, it's so thoughtful, and there's so much intention behind it. And this podcast is for, founders that start from day zero. So
Yeah.
it's literally like from the ground. It's like, how I don't have that many financial resources right now. How do I make people remember my brand and who we are? Point from a year later probably made so many people happy. Even just your friend, after you realize that they framed this on their wall.
I also think though it gave us an up from a business perspective. Yes, it was great for those milestones, but it also was an invitation to re-engage a year later with prospective clients or projects that we wanted to work on. And I think that's something that I would give as advice to anyone that's thinking of starting something, especially in 2025. You have to think of ways to stand out and stay top of mind. A lot of these industries are very saturated now, and you want to be in a position where you're establishing yourself as a real player on the scene, especially if it's more consumer focused. And a lot of the work that we're doing, I know that they're coming to us ultimately because I have a relationship with them or they've seen some of the work we produced as Meet the Edge. But now we're 4 years in, right? We didn't have that at day one at the beginning. And so I think for us, it's always been a matter of producing good work, playing the long game, doubling down, investing in relationships, not just cold outreach on email, pick up the phone, ask someone out to coffee. That's something that I've always been super proactive about. And some of the best advice that I was given when you're thinking around building is, you're going to eat regardless. So why not invite someone to a lunch or to a meal? And I think something happens when you're not in the business setting mode, because when you're sharing a meal, you're breaking bread, you get to just be a little bit more open and the conversation's free flowing, the stakes aren't as high. And I found a lot of success because you get to build that real relationship, not just when it's convenient, not just when it's transactional, but really authentic, deepening those roots. And those are the kind of relationships that I'm motivated by and that I try to bring to our team.
People love working with people they like. I mean,
Yeah.
why hire someone? Why would I want to go and partner with someone if I can't have a normal conversation with them?
And especially in our role, like we're a creative partner, right? So we're going to be with you for the long haul. And a lot of projects, if it's not a sprint, it's a multi-month engagement often. And you're spending a lot of time, bringing their baby to life. So you're spot on with that. I think you have to feel something as a marketer, even, we want to bring that energy to these projects and, ultimately grow with them and they can grow with us. It's a two-way street.
I think a lot of people miss that, the transactional bit and like the short term, like what can I gain right now in this meeting? There's a lot of networking events, and I would say a majority of them, it's like, hey, this is what I do. Can you give me money?
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus like actually getting to know, hey, like, is this person competent? Are
Yeah.
they a good person? Like, do they have good vibes? And like, what do they do when no one's watching? Kind of that stuff. And it's hard because that takes time. Like, you're not gonna know who that person is from the very beginning. And I guess how much did it cost to get those boxes?
Mm. It was definitely an expense. Now, I have left this part out of the story. Meet the Edge still to this day is bootstrapped. We have no investors. And I've become more adamant about speaking that into existence because I think it's really important for first time founders or just someone that has an idea. You can still be crafty and flexible and creative without a ton of resources on the back end. And I hope to be an example of that. Those kits cost a few $1,000s between not only producing the kit, mailing the kit, all the materials that went into it. We had to design them, we had to fabricate them. and then obviously re-engage, pay for postage, etc. So it was a few $1,000s, which is a big upfront cost, but I really believed in that because it was an opportunity to have something tangible in your hands. And I knew that we were moving in a direction as an industry where everything's going to become digitized. Think about the invitations that you get to an event. Unless it's a wedding or a bar mitzvah or something really momentous, odds are you're not getting something physical. And I think there is some magic moment where you are able to unbox or have that unveil and to have a handwritten note. It also just took time. I mean, I wrote every single note handwritten by myself, and I wanted to really use it as an introduction for, re-engagement, but also, prospective clients and friends and neighbors that I wanted to get in front of and say, hey, this is what I'm building. What can I take off your plate? How can I help bring your idea to life? Or if they're even a sphere of influence, or maybe it's not them directly, but I know that they're tapped in to respective industries. How can we be a team player and help bring XYZ domain to life?
How many of these did you send out?
Oh my gosh, I think we sent out like 200. Yeah. So it was a commitment, but I was so adamant about it, Jess. I was like, I want these to get distributed. And the most amazing thing happened. They started getting a lot of traction online. So people were sharing organically, and it creates that curiosity. And I think from a marketing perspective, this was our launch, this was our debut, and I wanted Meet the Edge to become a household name. And for people within the apparatus, especially in the New York community, but also other markets that we wanted to work within, for them to see the name, see the kit, start putting two and two together, have the curiosity to go visit the website to see what's this all about, what are they working on? And that paid off big time. So from an ROI perspective, I definitely validated the cost upfront, but launch the business. And I think this could be interesting for some of the viewers. I worked at Banana Republic when I was in high school. That was my first ever job. And I used all of my savings from, my hourly gig working at the King of Prussia Mall in Pennsylvania. And I used that really as a baseboard to file the LLC paperwork, to get the Meet the Edge domain name, to produce the kits. And I always was scrappy. And I think I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So that's always been in the bloodstream. It's, play to your strengths and figure out where you need to fill those holes. And we've been able to do that as a team.
So exciting. And look where you are now. You're in New York.
I made it to the Big Apple.
Yeah. I think there was a lot of golden nuggets here, but people really expect success at a really quick pace. And the fact that it's not going to take your first year. I think people are going to be in the red for a while and they have to be okay with it. You know, you realized that later on you justified and you validated like that few $1,000s for just the boxes and materials actually got somewhere.
That catapulted us in a whole different league, because think of all the other people that were thinking of starting a design studio or a marketing agency at that time. They weren't producing a kit. They're throwing up a website, which is great. No disrespect, but that's not going to move the needle. That's not memorable, in my opinion. And I think, the kind of marketing that we're thinking about is marketing that moves the needle. Having something tangible that you have a shareability component, online, offline, transmedia. That's what we were trying to tap into. And it also allowed us to just really stay engaged in a way that I think was staying top of mind. And I've said that before in this episode, but it's a constant battle. If we have limited attention spans and we're spending more time online, it's like, how are you going to capture the zeitgeist of culture, but also be a thought leader and also produce, talented output, and also be genuine in intention. And I think so much now, what I see, I was talking to a friend yesterday at lunch about this, is it just feels so transactional. And
Hmm.
I want to move back to the human centric side of like, why did we get into this industry? And, you know, it's worth investing in, because ultimately this is what lives on beyond you. People will know you for your brand and what you're looking to produce. I would also say, I think in terms of ROI, like starting something, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's not in everyone's DNA. Some people are very risk averse. I think part of entrepreneurship is you are taking a plunge into the deep end. I went all in, and I'm a firm believer in that. Some people disagree with me in sense that like, oh, you should keep, your full-time job and have something on the side. I'm not bullish on that. I think if you've got a dream, life is short, you've got to fight for it. And I've been pounding the pavement in New York for 9 years now. And that's the reason why we're still kicking, 4 years in as a studio. But if I hadn't been willing to take some of those risks, I would not be talking to you right now. We wouldn't have the logos on our website. We wouldn't have these amazing relationships. So it's comfortable being uncomfortable. And there's also that adage of no pain, no gain. And look, I'm a straight shooter. The first 2 years of this month, our 4 year as a team, were slow. And I think partially it might have been, instability post inauguration. A lot of these organizations were figuring out where to allocate marketing budget towards. And then March, after going to South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, things really started to turn around. So I think you have to trust your gut. You have to surround yourself with the right people. As my old boss, Sean Jay-Z Carter would say, what did he say? Your network is your net worth. I firmly believe that. You're a reflection of who you surround yourself with. So I think you got to choose wisely.
Uh, a lot of people are in the digital age right now. Like you had mentioned, where our attention span suck. Like it's the attention span of a goldfish.
Yeah.
But I think there still is something, and I have changed my mind about it because I didn't think that business cards mattered. Now I'm like, honestly, if you have a really, really great business card, you still stand out. And after all, it's a numbers game. But there is this act of giving someone something that has your name on it, your branding on it. And I see all these, what is it, blue dot or like blue, like digital cards. I I don't remember anybody from there. But I sometimes pick up a physical card and there's something that's what is that word, like just like thinking about the back days, like the old days, like it's slipping my mind. Serendipitous on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think it can become personalized and it's something that you take with you. We've designed our own tote bags that we screen printed. We did merch with crew necks. We created our own card game. And a lot of these were marketing extensions. And something we haven't touched on is, the studio is pillar one of Meet the Edge. And that's how we engage with clients on a monthly basis. But about 2 years in, I realized, wait a minute, love working with clients, but we don't own any of the IP at the end of the day, right? So it's a client's prerogative whether they choose to continue with our work or, extenuating circumstances that are beyond our control. Often that will get shifted around. So we wanted to create an extension of the studio called MTE Labs, which is really where we design products, offline experiences that we own end to end as a team. And so we created I Am on Edge, a retail card game. We did a case study for the MTA, reimagining the subway. We've done takeover nights. We're working on an event next month called Meet the Heat with JP Morgan is sponsoring. And essentially, we're going to put founders and funders opposite sides of a table, and we're going to have a series of escalating questions coinciding with the Scoville index of hot sauce. And it's going to be a gamified format who can make it to the end, but ask those unfiltered questions that move your business forward. No pleasantries, no BS, straight shooters. And I think there's going to be a lot of riveting moments that will come out of that. And it's very on brand for us as a studio. Meet the edge, meet the heat, embrace vulnerability, push the boundaries where you can. And I think I bring that up and these offshoots of the business because those are other avenues where it puts us in front of new audiences, but it's memorable. You won't forget going to meet the heat. You might forget that boring industry happy hour where it was loud and you couldn't hear anyone. It's like, what's on their name tag? But if they gave you a business card or they invited you to something and they made you feel like a VIP, retail's detail.
Want you to brag about your clients, your past clients. Can you do
Ah,
that? Let's name drop here.
I'm really proud of the roster that we've accumulated over the years. And a lot of these are still active client projects as we speak. I mean, a few highlights. One in particular that means a lot to me is called Mancusta Capital. And this was a visual identity that we created, website design dev. But I did not know at the beginning of this particular project that our designs would be featured on Will Smith's electric boat racing team, E1 Racing. A lot of people might know F1, Formula One. This is now E1, which is electric boat racing. And Will has a team. And so I wake up one day and I see our designs featured on this boat. And, it's competing in races overseas in Europe. And that was a real thrill. That was fun. Another big flagship project we did was called Super Real. And this was an immersive projection mapping experience with our client Cipriani and Moment Factory. down on Wall Street here in the city. And so we did a big out of home campaign. We printed these vinyl stickers that we put on sidewalks, some of which are still visible today. And this was multiple years back. So those things are durable, let me tell you. But that was great because I love offline experiences. And if you can gather a room and curate a group of people, you got to make it worthwhile. But this was kind of sensational. There was music. The entire venue was 360-degree projection mapped. So all the crevices, it's 100-plus-year-old building, an old ticketing company for the Cunard steam line ships. And that was a big highlight because we did a Amex party with Lizzo. We did the governor's ball after party, amongst other activations within the space. And it's all programmable. So I learned a lot from that experience in terms of how to be taking a B2B play and make it B2C and making it attractive for consumers with everyday ticket sales versus just private events. Other projects, we have this amazing nonprofit we're working with right now called Social Creatures, and they're doing a lot of incredible work in the behavioral health space and thinking about our addiction to technology, the loneliness epidemic, new parents entering a world and children, how can you create ideal programming where it's thinking collectively around taking everyone along in the journey together. And this is fun. It's part of Robin Hood Foundation, which is a huge nonprofit enterprise here in New York City. And I love that work. Just I find it quite fulfilling. And then another project that I'm proud of, Keanu, which is a instant kava powder brand that's launching soon. So by the time this airs, it's probably going to be out in the world. But we design custom packaging, unboxing experience, and a ton of collateral for this new kind of better for you, no alcohol, no drugs, but it numbs your tongue. Kava is a Pacific Island root extract, and we had the privilege of building out its brand identity. So that's going to be fun to see it live on store shelves. And we're doing a tasting happy hour next month. So excited about that one as well.
So many fun things. So you've been at this for now going on 5 years?
4.5 years at the moment. Yeah.
Was there a point where you're like, I'm very happy I like this, a moment, or maybe like, was it year 3, year 4, like you've been getting into it now, that you're like, hey, like this makes sense now. Like I was designed for this and I feel like success is subjective, but any moments?
It's a great question. I just got back from Los Angeles and we had this event in Long Beach for a client for SoCal Deep Tech Week. And we took over this airplane hangar. And on my flight out there, I did have that moment where, I got to meet some of our clients for the first time in person and to see the reaction of like our work printed on collateral, printed on signage, on the invitation, and to know that like we created that in-house as a team is pretty epic. And it's always in those moments where I'm a very grateful person, a manifester. I'm definitely spiritual in nature. And that was a moment where, yeah, I like looked up to the sky and I was like, this is pretty cool, to know that we have basically a mashup because we have Dauntless Ventures, which is our client, and then Fulcrum Venture Group, and they both collaborated on this event and we got to build the brands for each of them respectively. Um, that was a cool moment. I went to London last year and met one of our first international clients. And that was a real treat to see some of the work that we did within their office. And yeah, I think anytime I get to see our name out in the wild, someone texted me, this was like 2 months ago, and they were uptown in New York and they had a Meet the Edge tote bag that we hand screen printed ourselves. And they saw someone across the street with the same tote bag. And I was like, that is cool. That's epic. And to know that like our name is out there and we've got a great reputation and, I want to become a household name. Our master plan is to create more experiences, products, offshoots. I think our story begins as a design studio. And I'm really proud of that as an origin because it allows us to curate our group and our network. But long term, Meet the Edge will be definitely more front facing.
Let's switch the segment at the very end of this too, because we're talking about all the great stuff. We're talking about, the name dropping and all the cool things that we're experiencing with like the success and like, dude, let's talk about the gritty stuff. Like in the very beginnings of it too, I'm sure you had moments as any entrepreneur was like, is this worth it? Like, should I keep going? you are faced with a lot of, I don't want to say failures, because I feel like failing is when you stop, but setbacks.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Talk about the setbacks, like the very beginning of it all, and um, any memorable moments of
Well, I
like,
definitely got a story for you, Jess. So it was year one of the business, and the pandemic was still very active at the time, and we were basically brought on to help with the opening of a new nightclub venue in New York City. I'm not going to say where or who, but these were basically this organization's first time producing a nightclub in the New York City market, and it was scheduled to open New Year's of 2021. Kind of leading into January. It was going to be a 2 night affair. We were curating all of the creative, the design, marketing campaign prepared. And this was a referral from one of our largest clients at the time. So there was a real clear line of trust in this instance. And again, year one of building something, I didn't have a playbook to follow. I never worked at a studio or an agency before. So even our contracts, before we had a project manager at that time, I was basically scrapping the paperwork together, and I didn't have the foresight to put in a clause in the contract. What happens if we do all this work and the event doesn't happen because of an outbreak of COVID? And essentially, this is what happened. And things started closing in December at that time, and things are starting to get canceled. We did all the work, but we never got paid for it. And it ended up being 6 months later that venue ended up opening. But at that point, I had to pay our team. We were in the gutter for thousands of dollars of work that was completed. But because I hadn't organized the paperwork in the right way and we didn't have certain sections and clauses, it was an amazing learning lesson. And I kind of wanted to make my mess my message. Now, as the story turns out, I found out that the group that was running this, there was a lot of back and forth that we had. We looped in our legal team. They ended up all getting kicked out of the country for tax evasion. So, as the story goes, be careful who you do business with and always be above board. So, I guess there is a little bit of, gratification knowing, okay, it wasn't just us. And I had other vendors that worked in this particular project reach out to me afterwards, being like, "Did you ever get paid for that?" I was like, "Nope." But I say this because in entrepreneurship, you're going to be tasked with uncomfortable situations. Be comfortable being uncomfortable. And because this was an introduction from one of our largest well-known clients at the time, I had to walk that fine line of how much pushback do I give? I didn't have the repertoire or the confidence even at that time to really put more pedal to the metal and be like, come on, guys, like we did the work, we need to get compensated for it. I made a conscious decision. I'm going to walk away. And we never got paid for that work, by the way. But I felt like it was a lesson that I needed to learn. And I always say you can't grow in comfort. It's the antithesis. You really can't. And that was a moment where I really grew as a leader and as a creative entrepreneur.
all the entrepreneurial lessons is basically tuition. Yeah, I
100%.
like, I think whoever is getting into entrepreneurship, just know that you will lose money and that's okay.
I also think you have to invest in your dreams.
Mhm.
And some people don't have the fortitude to be able to do that, or maybe perhaps they don't believe in it enough that they're not willing to put their money where their mouth is. And I respect the hell out of anyone that is really putting money and time and resources into building their vision. And you have to make sacrifices. Because we were bootstrapped, I couldn't really afford to travel for the first 2 years of the business because I was paying our team and barely paying myself. And as we started growing and the projects got larger, that changed over time. But at the beginning, you make sacrifices and that builds you up character, I think, long term.
The sacrifices are real, not just like financial sacrifices, but time sacrifices of like,
Gosh.
not everybody wants to be a builder. Not a lot of your friends. In the last podcast episode, we talked about this a little bit, where your relationships will suffer because you start missing out birthdays, you start missing out events, and it's because you have this. You're basically having a baby. Like you're basically having a child that needs your care and your tending. And until it starts revenue producing and it starts like being okay on its own, you're basically stuck there. And a lot of the times, it's not a 1 year, 2 year timeline. I think for you to get to that point and feel comfortable is at least in the 5 to 10 year mark. It's crazy. But, yeah, like you had mentioned earlier in the episode, it's not for everybody.
It's not. And I think if it was, and everyone would go down this road. And the entrepreneurial journey, you learn so much about yourself, you learn about other people, you grow so much. And I was thinking about this the other day. The people in my life now, I can't imagine having crossed paths with them if I hadn't started something, if I hadn't taken the risk, if I hadn't met the edge, right? And I had to do that and have the guts to do that at the time when it wasn't as mainstream. I think now, because we're living in a world with even more resources than we had 4 or 5 years ago, it's a lot more convenient for people to be able to have a side hustle or start something. But I was all in. This was my baby, still is. And our team knows that, our clients know that. I'm committed. You can text me, email me, call me, because those are the relationships we want to build. And that's how you're going to build towards the future. And if you're not in that headspace, I think you're going to have a really hard time and get left behind. You have to be so committed and disciplined and curious. And you have to be plugged into what's going on in culture, subcultures, not just mainstream, but what's happening in the underbelly of society, and find those insights, because the best marketing is tied to an insight. And we get to then execute on that from a creative lens.
Yeah. Well said. Very, very well said. What do you think what's an advice you would give people that are listening
Mm,
that, after your 5 years and yeah, someone's starting off from day 0.
yeah. I mean, at its truest sense, I think in a very practical mode, surround yourself with people that you want to have in your life, and surround yourself with people that are going to challenge you, that you'll learn something from, that aren't carbon copies of you, but that you can really learn something. And I said this before, but you can't grow in comfort. So I've made a conscious decision to have friends that are older than me, that are speaking different languages, that are from different parts of the world, that are faithful or spiritual in other ways than I am, and aren't just in New York and look like me and talk like me and have a certain lifestyle like me, but really, like, there's a beauty in diversity of thought, diversity of opinion. And I think, not to get political about it, and I hate that I'm even saying not to get political about it, because it shouldn't even be something that has to be an asterisk in front of it, but I think we need to know our neighbors. We've gotten so far away from what we have in common. And if you start spending too much time online, you forget that we're actually a lot more similar. And I think it's a lot harder to say some of the things that people put onto the internet face to face. There's a lot more overlap and commonality. And something that I would also give advice towards is, if you live in a city and you're lucky enough to live in a place like New York or a big metropolitan area, know your neighbors, invite them out for dinner, ask them to come over and hang, build those bridges, because it makes your daily life more fulfilling. But on the entrepreneurial side, it puts you in front of a whole new audience that you might not have been before. I think you, in a practical sense, you also have to be your biggest advocate, your biggest champion. You do this better than anyone I know. And you have to also pay it forward. Like, if you're friends with others in the industry and they have different notoriety or they have different skill sets, like, leverage that on those favors. I don't think there's anything wrong with, asking for help and admitting when you don't know something. And I've seen that happen at previous places that I was employed at, where the CEO admitted they didn't know how to do something, or it was uncharted territory. And I think a lot of entrepreneurship, unless it's your second act, and I know the focus of this podcast is your first act, and that's the same for me. I never started something prior. You're learning on the fly. So why not ask for help? Surround yourself with people that inspire you, that aren't just carbon copies, but you have to believe. You also have to play the long game, be comfortable being uncomfortable, and just don't give up. It's really easy to give up. There is a sense of privilege to be able to keep pursuing something if it's not bringing you monetary expression. But at the end of the day, life is short. We're only here for so many years. So why not? And if not now, when?
I love that. The discernment aspect too, you spoke about working with friends. It's like, yes, talk about your friends. I mean, if they're a good person.
Yeah.
Like, don't just, like, give other people, like, bad work and, you get a kickback out of that. No, don't do that. But that is really important, like, shine light on others, and it's really hard because sometimes you can mix business with pleasure, and sometimes you might get into a project because you did see a potential in somebody because, like, they're your friend and they must be great. But I think you have to have enough discernment to know where it's gonna lead. Like, do they actually come with experience or not? Um,
And that's a great point and a segue to what I was going to bring up because I've had the experience of it going great working with friends, and I've also had to fire friends at the company. And I think part of being a leader and my role as CEO is you have to know that you have an obligation to put the interest of the company first and forward. And the person relationships are here. But at the end of the day, people are relying on me for their paycheck and they're part of a team and, I think Netflix has this concept where, they never call themselves a family. I believe that as well. I don't think you're a family, you're a team. And you want all stars and you want people around you that will uplift the culture and be great communicators and be willing and able to support, when duty calls. But it's not for everyone. And some people, I think, glamorize entrepreneurship and if you live all of your time online, then you'll see a plethora of content that's, I made my first million overnight. If it was that easy, someone tell me, please, because it's challenging. But I think on the human, like personal relationship side, it goes both ways. And some people think that they want to be part of a startup, but they actually want stability and they want to be able to clock out. And I know what my past 4 years have looked like. I've given everything to meet the edge, and I have no regrets about that. But it does take a toll on personal relationships, and you have to be comfortable with that. And, I am. So you never know unless you try, as my dad would always say.
when you said, the bit about being a leader, it's putting the business before other thoughts and reserves and all that. I think that comes with time too, right? Like you get through the setbacks and then you're like, "Oh wait, shouldn't have done that." Then you're supposed to learn from them.
Yeah, and I also think the universe sends you signs sometimes and reframing, I love a good reframe, why is this happening to me? And turning that into like, what's the lesson I need to learn right now? And that's been a big unlock for me as a leader, ultimately, because it's like, why didn't we win that project? I felt like we did everything right. Or, why did I mishire this person because they killed it in the interview and they had a great reference. But then when it was day to day, they weren't able to have that level of commitment that we really need as a small team. There's only 5 of us that meet the edge. So I always say we punch above our weight, we're lean and mean, but we need all hands on deck for some of these projects. And I try to reframe these opportunities as moments to, you know, reframe it. What's the lesson I need to learn?
You are only as good as the people that you bring on,
You know
like,
it.
or the people that you're with. And it's hard because when you realize that there are some people, and I don't like it, but there are people out there that, like, do not have other people's best interest. Like, they're out for themselves. There's a lot of greed out there, but as your job as a leader, it's your responsibility to filter them out. I mean, give yourself some grace too, but hiring well, scaling, like, you get to a certain point, like, there's no way if you wanna make a really big company, an impactful company that is just 1 or 2 people, like, unless you're in, like, SaaS or, like, digital and stuff. But something, like, more tangible in real life, it can't just be 1 or 2 people.
No. And one of my best friends, Madison, quoted this, and it always stays with me. She has two parts of advice. One, trust the timing of your life. Two, alone, you can only go so far. Together, unstoppable.
That Thank you so much for having this amazing conversation with me. I hope
I
you
was
had a great
delighted.
time.
Thank you.
Come back again, so let's, like, revisit this. We can write it, we can manifest it, and then we'll be back in a year.
I'm game. Anything with you, my friend.
Yay. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And I hope to see you in New York sometime. I don't know when, but and then
Yes.
if you want to come to South by,
Count me in. We're ready. Next year, collaboration. It's going down.
go. Okay. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And see y'all next time.